What's going on, YouTube? LTH coming at you with a video. 713 the Space City, and we in the building. And I know January is right around the corner. 2025 is winding down fast in a hurry. Amazing. Just like how football season is winding down. The regular season at that, with the playoffs approaching. Thankfully, my Houston Texans, clinched a playoff spot this Saturday against the Chargers, another team that we should have put away, but had to count on the defense to do what the offense can't do consistently, and that is keep the foot on the Knicks. So now that the Texans have won their Week 17 matchup and officially moved up to the 5th seed, thanks to beating the Chargers and the Bills losing to the Eagles, even though Philly almost blew that game, in a game that they had 17 yards in the second half with 0 points. Insanely ironic. But at the end of the day, an ugly win is a win, and hey, salute to the Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Texans are now the 5th seed. Would have liked to have been the 3rd seed, but unfortunately, Jacksonville held on, thanks to an interception. So Houston, but Houston, still alive for the AFC South crown for at least one more week. But not to mention, Jacksonville has the Tennessee Titans, who are rebuilding. But I'm going to just say this. Before I get to the preview of Colts versus Texans in the regular season finale, I'm going to go ahead and get this out the way real quick. And I'll say this. Even a potential 9-game winning streak may not be enough for Houston to win their 3rd straight AFC South crown. So I'm just say this. If the Jacksonville Jaguars happen to win the AFC South, I gotta say, they deserved it. They truly do, courtesy on how they happened to recover after that Week 10 choke job against the Texans. At the time, Davis Mills was filling in for Stroud. At the time, the Texans were 3-5, looking like one more loss could really damage their playoff hopes going forward. But I wouldn't even sweat if Jacksonville clinched the AFC South this Sunday, even without a Houston loss. Because all it takes is a Jags win to clinch the AFC South, while a Texans win and a Jags loss would eventually give Houston their 3rd straight AFC South. But not to mention, I'm not going to get my hopes up at all. Even though that would lead to who the opponent, lead to Texans having a home game as the 3 seed, potentially being the Jaguars, Bills, or the Chargers, as the 3 seed hosting the home playoff game. Should the Texans stay at the 5 seed, they would eventually play the winner of the Ravens and Steelers for the AFC North crown. And I'll say this. If the Steelers win, hey, Houston will go to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. If the Ravens win, they will go back to where they scored. They'll go back to where they won earlier in the year, which was like week 5. Yeah, I believe it was week 5. Yeah, week 5 in Baltimore. To take on a quarterback that has never lost to the Texans before, and the Baltimore Ravens. But as they say, everything is not guaranteed. So just have to see what happens and what unfolds, in this last week of football in the regular season. So let's get into this Texans versus Colts preview. And I've learned that, if I'm not mistaken, Phillip Rivers won't be starting, meaning Riley Leonard is going to be the starting quarterback for Week 18 versus Houston. And I got to say, Jonathan Taylor is their offense. Even with, as good as Daniel Jones played like earlier in the year before the slump, Jonathan Taylor has been their offense throughout the whole year. Over 1,500 yards rushing. Yeah. So, for the Houston Texans, riding an 8-game winning streak, looking to sweep the Colts for the second straight year, something that's never been done in the history of their existence. And not to mention, I don't expect this game to be a blowout, by the way. Not because of how tough these two teams play each other, but how the offense doesn't seem to be too consistent enough to put teams away, when the opportunity comes knocking. So I won't be surprised if the defense is once again relied on, because what can I say? The Texans defense has been their key during this 8-game winning streak. So I gotta say, if the Texans want to close out the season with 9 straight wins, along with a potential third straight AFC South crown, and yeah, sure, the Jags will have to lose against the Titans, which I'm not getting my hopes up on. It all starts with the offense consistently sustaining drives for 4 quarters straight. Example, Stroud, hot start and then crumbled in the second quarter with 2 bad interceptions by forcing it. Decision making and pocket awareness, especially against the blitzes, will have to be key for CJ Stroud. Got to do a better job of reading the blitzes. I mean, sure, he didn't get sacked, but he made some pretty crappy decisions, which led to him getting them 2 picks. So Stroud got to make better decisions by taking better care of the football instead of forcing it. I mean, the big players are going to come eventually. Just got to have patience, if it means, keeping the opposing secondary guessing. So Stroud got to play with some swagger for 60 minutes. And I won't be shocked if Trent Brown and Ursery don't play this game, then chances are they'll play in the playoffs, just like Jalen Reed for sure. And still no word on when Jimmy Ward's going to play, but it is what it is. But yeah, the offense will have to play a lot better than last game. I mean, if not for those 2 quick touchdowns, Houston would eventually lost this game for sure. And of course, possibly the shot of the AFC South title. But thankfully, though, and of course, the offense, got to be more disciplined, along with playing some characteristic, disciplined football on every phase, especially in the trenches. Stay ahead of the trenches. Don't fall behind in the trenches. And of course, you want to establish the run game with Woody Marks. Use 3 running backs if you have to. Woody Marks, Nick Chubb, Jawar Jordan against the Colts defense that don't have DeForest Buckner, who's out with a season-ending injury, who just came back versus the 49ers, by the way. DeForest Buckner's a dog. I'll acknowledge that. And they recently got Sauce Gardner, but, gotta give Nico Collins the rock, to be exact. Big time wide receiver, gotta feed him the ball consistently. Just as long as he consistently catch the ball. And of course, you want to once again use Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel Use those guys in the passing game. Hell, even get Hutchinson involved. Xavier Hutchinson. You know, use him. Use him in the pass game. Whether it's a screen, short pass, long. Just long as they're utilized effectively. Hell, get Stover and Schultz involved. Gotta utilize those tight ends too, which can and will come in handy. Just as long as the play calls aren't predictable. Yeah, you know, just like how Eagles fans got on Patullo for his conservative play calling. Hey, Nick Caley got to stop with the conservative play calls as well. And learn to stay aggressive in all his play calls, because that could be the only way the Texans find a way to put teams away offensively, to be exact, if it means taking the pressure off the defense that's been carrying the load all year, pretty much. And I get it. Now, could this offense could have been better? Oh, absolutely. And also, could Stroud have been better? Oh, absolutely. But early season slow start, but as they say, it's not how you start, it's how the hell you finish. So mistake-free football on offense is going to be key for sure. And of course, win the time of possession if it means keeping the Colts defense on their heels, which is like keeping Jonathan Taylor on the sideline as much as possible. Because like I just mentioned, Jonathan Taylor is a stud, and Jonathan Taylor is their offense. So Nick Caley got to be extra aggressive for all 4 quarters in football. Not just 1 quarter, not just 2 quarters, all 4 quarters for 60 minutes. But sometimes it could be nice if Stroud can run the offense as well. If he understands that he sees what he doesn't like, there's always room for effective audibles, creative audibles. Let Stroud run the offense a notch. But now, as far as the defense goes, yeah, they did their thing, but also they got to do a better job of not committing boneheaded penalties. Because come to think of it, Toe could have had at least 1 sack, while the Nico Autry could have. If I think about it, the Texans could have had up to 7 to 8 sacks, or possibly 9 as a team. Take away some bullshit ass penalties. They would have had that number of sacks. But gotta do a better job of, not committing dumb penalties, and, not staying on the field a little too long. Because stay on the field for too long, defense is going to get gassed, tired. And then, not to mention, opposing offense is going to start, exploiting their defense consistently. So, got to be a little bit more characteristic on the defensive side, plus discipline. Play like some disciplined villains out there. Like stay aggressive through the trenches, and create some negative plays on the Colts offense. Keep consistently limit Jonathan Taylor as much as possible, because that's the number 1 key. And of course, slow down Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, and Tyler Warren. Slow those guys down creatively without committing any boneheaded pass interference penalties or even hands to the face. Just play smart defense. Don't give up the big plays through the air and the ground as well. Because like I mentioned, Jonathan Taylor, he's a stud, and you want to be able to neutralize him enough to make Riley Leonard beat you with his arm, and only his arm. And I'll admit, Colts got a pretty good offensive line. But even with Mario Edwards and Tim Settle both out for the year, I still believe that our D-line is still pretty good. So, of course, you want to see Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter create pressure on Riley Leonard. But you also want to see a supporting cast outside of Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter get sacked, such as Tommy Togai, Derek Barnett, Sheldon Rankins. I wouldn't mind seeing him create sacks. Or hell, even Henry To'o. I wouldn't mind even seeing him get sacks. Or a Cesar Shire or EJ Speed. Hell, I wouldn't mind seeing some linebackers get sacks. You know, because every sack and every forced turnover matter. So, including forced interceptions, by the way. So, gotta create takeaways. Don't give them the short field. Make the Colts work for every yard possible. Make them earn it. Don't hand it to them on a silver platter. Make them earn it through the trenches. Make the Colts offense earn it. Make them beat you Make them beat you in the long field. Give them bad field position. Don't give them good field position. Make them beat you going 80 or more or 100 yards, if I may say. And of course, impact players in the secondary's got to do their thing as well. Stingley, Lassiter, Bullock, Petrie. Got to see those guys step up as well. It sucks that another week that our secondary depth is still pretty crappy, but just got to grind it out. And yeah, it would have been nice if they signed a safety, such as, Justin Simmons, but along with Tyrann Mathieu, but that's looking more and more unlikely with each passing second. So it is what the hell it is. So, which will lead to them having to address that position in the upcoming offseason. But yeah, man, for the Texans defense to have another good outing, got to consistently, create pass rush and create, along with sacks and forced turnovers, and start fast and stuff, like fast and strong start for the defense, by getting the Colts off the field on, let's say, for example, on their first drive. And on and on and on and on at that. But yeah, but this ain't the first time these two teams met in week 18. Last time these two met was at a Saturday night game, which was January 6, 2024, in which the Texans won, which led to them returning to the playoffs in 2023. But except for this time, Week 18 is in Houston and will be played at noon. Now that the Week 18 schedules came out, this game is going to be played at noon. So, yeah. Basically, mistake-free football on both sides of the ball is key in this game. And of course, you want to win the time of possession in the turnover battle. It's going to boil down to execution, offensive execution. Which offense executes when it matters most, especially in the red zone. I mean, yeah, field goal, yeah, take the points is cool and all, but 7s on the board is a lot better at that. Gonna boil down to execution and who makes the plays, along with who commits the least amount of mistakes out there on the field. So, yeah, let's go Houston Texans. 713 Space City, Lord of Houston, checking on up out of here. If you enjoy what you see, hit that like, hit that share, and hit that subscribe. So, with that being said, Lord of Houston, checking on up out of here. 713 Space City. And I'm out. Go Texans. Let's take care of business Sunday.